Hello, good afternoon. Saturday at 2 o'clock. That means My Top 10 as our series continues. And this week we're in the company of Roger Taylor. Roger, thank you for joining us.
A pleasure. Nice to be here, Andy.
Nice to have you here. What are we going to start with?
We're going to start with Elvis Presley, the King, I suppose. One of the sort of first things I remember him doing as a very young kid. And, I was a young kid, he wasn't. And it's All Shook Up.
Presley and All Shook Up. Roger Taylor of Queen with us in the studio for this week's edition of My Top 10. Roger, strange that you as a drummer should start with a track where there are only brushes on the drum kit.
Yeah, and there's a funny tapping noise on the offbeat. It's strange. I remember when I heard that as a kid, everybody used to say, well, I can't hear a word he's singing. I can hear every word now. It just shows how things have changed, I think.
Do you still enjoy mucking about playing music like that? I mean, do Queen in rehearsal, behind the privacy of a rehearsal room, ever fool around with songs like that?
Well, yeah, we used to do several old Elvis songs. In fact, until fairly recently, we would often play Jailhouse Rock or Rip It Up, something like that on stage.
He really did have a great voice, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was a seminal rock and roll delivery, voice, the way he did things. And he had a wonderful voice.
Was he one of the people in your youth that began to influence you and channel you towards the possibility of what you've been doing?
Absolutely. I mean, Elvis's early records were the start of rock and roll, along with Bill Haley, who I loved at the time, and of course Little Richard, who probably had even as good a voice as Elvis in a slightly different way. And I quite liked Jerry Lee Lewis at the time. I'm not so keen on him these days. But
what about you as a vocalist in those early days? I mean, were your early impressions of the possibility of stardom aligned to a drum kit and the kitchen section, or was it vocals as well?
No, I didn't used to say. I used to try and imitate the trumpet.
Did you really? What a strange thing to do.
You know.
Very good.
But no, I always wanted to be a guitarist, really. Frustrated guitarist, I think.
Well, we shall trace your musical life, I've no doubt, in the next hour. What are we going to have as number 2?
Well, I always think of this as being a sort of Lennon thing, but it's the Beatles, and because John Lennon, I think, was my favourite writer and possibly performer. It's the sort of anthem for me of the psychedelic era, which is "I Am the Walrus."
The Beatles, who else? And I Am the Walrus. Roger Taylor of Queen is our guest in the studio on this week's edition of My Top 10. Interested that you picked that and perhaps not A Day in the Life, but you see that as being one of the anthems of the era.
Yeah, well, it's hard to pick between that, A Day in the Life, and Strawberry Fields, but that for me has the edge. I love that bit of the afternoon theatre that comes in at the end. A little bit of a Radio 4 play as they obviously whipped along the radio dial.
Poor old Ringo got some terrible stick in his early days as a drummer, but I think by that stage he had
Terrible stick?
Yes, sorry about that. Sorry about that, Roger. I should know better in the presence of a percussionist. But that having been said, I mean, it is true. He was lambasted by pretty well everybody. By the time they got to record things like that, I think he'd, we can use the phrase, got his act together, hadn't he?
Oh, actually, I think Ringo did some very original things. The drumming on, for instance, Ticket to Ride is a completely unique drum pattern. And it was very new. I remember trying to perfect that when it came out. And
you went for the Mersey beat, did you?
Well, yeah, I don't know about Mersey beat. But, I thought he fulfilled his role in the Beatles very well.
Who were your major influences percussion-wise in the early days of tampering with drum kits?
Well, I mean, I used to listen to Joe Morello and people like that. And Buddy Rich.
The Dave Brubeck Quartet.
Yeah, that's right. Take 5, etc. But I think really that for real influence, I think I'd have to say John Bonham more than anybody else, because he's still the best rock drummer that I've ever seen in a league of his own, and miss him. But his son, Jason, is coming on leaps and bounds. In fact, he's now joined a band I produced last year called Virginia Woolf.
Yeah.
And he's a real powerhouse.
There are many, many strings to your bow, percussion-wise and drum-wise. Interesting that you mentioned Bonham. I mean, do you feel now that Roger Taylor and Queen, or if you like, Roger Taylor with Queen, have a definitive drum sound that we expect to hear on records?
No, I hope not, because we've never tried to tie our music down in any one direction, which doesn't please everybody, but it pleases us. It's nice to think that the drums are really recorded differently in everything we do, hopefully to suit that particular song. or that particular time that we're recording in. So no, I wouldn't say we do have any kind of recognisable drum sound.
I remember coming along with a girlfriend of mine to see you at the Free Trade Hall in Manchester in the mid to late 70s on a tour, and you had a massive collection of drums surrounding you. Do you actually like that? It's a question I've often wanted to ask a drummer, as to whether they like something small, you know, a small Gretsch kit, or one of those 20-inch bass drums they used to produce in the 60s.
Well, small was never a word that was in the Queen vocabulary.
No, it wasn't, was it? Do you feel happy? I mean, there's almost a sort of psychological thing, I think, about drummers hiding behind this huge battery of equipment.
It's not Freudian. No, I don't know. It used to look good, let's face it. And yeah, I mean, I used to hit everyone at least once a night. I mean, I used to like big drums because I used to like the sound of big drums. I never had as many drums as quite a lot of other people. And these days, I mean, I try and keep it as simple as possible, and just the drums that will do the job most efficiently, you know.
What sort of collection of percussion do you have, dare I ask? Have you got sort of garages full? And
Well, I've got a very large room that's sort of pretty full of different drum kits and timps and stuff like that.
And do you play every day?
No, I don't. No,
You
I'm
shocker.
afraid not.
You
Yeah,
shocker. No practice pads over breakfast and all that?
Oh, good God, no. No.
Right, track number 3, which once again is John Lennon.
Yeah, well, I thought his first solo album, Plastic Ono Band, was just incredible. It was new, completely different. It had a tremendous influence on a lot of musicians I know, and it had a terrific influence on me in 1970. And I think the intensity that he reached on that album has never been reached on any other album I've ever heard, the general level of intensity. And I know it's okay, it's a very serious sort of song, but I think the song God is possibly one of the best songs on the album. So that's the one I picked. And I think the sentiments are great.
God is a concept.
John Lennon, the Plastic Ono Band, and that is God. And before that, I Am the Walrus, the song that he actually mentioned in the lyrics of that later recording. It's lovely to hear that again. What was it you admired about him? I mean, I always say the wit and the politics behind the Beatles, with respect to everybody else.
Yeah, his sort of rapier-like mind, obviously. And his incredible... he had a great voice. He was the best songwriter. Great lyricist, great singer. You know, he had it all going for him, really, didn't he?
Somewhere in the annals of my trivia-like mind, a little birdie prompted me to think last night, contemplating you coming in, does Dentistry figure somewhere in your deep and distant past, or am I entirely wrong?
No, absolutely never heard of it. What is it?
Is it true that you were...
No, I did study dentistry for 18 months at London Hospital Medical College, yeah. But it wasn't a time I particularly enjoyed. It wasn't a job for me.
If we keep the puns up, was it
Yeah.
an amalgam of dentistry and music at the time?
Well, I was looking very down in the mouth at the time, and I just really didn't enjoy it. It wasn't for me, you know. And I was really, all I wanted to do was be a musician. So I sort of got the student grant, which enabled me to come to London, to be perfectly honest, and start a band. And to be quite frank, that was my main motive.
And where did Queen actually rear its head? At what stage of your musical career? How long had you been going?
Well, we started, I suppose, really in 1970. And we sort of, we didn't want to go through the pub circuit and everything, or come up the hard way, really. We wanted to get everything just right, and then sort of burst all over the public. And which in a way is what we did, you know.
Yes, and it paid off, really. I mean,
yeah, but it took us 3 years to get a record contract. It's a tough business. It's a very competitive, tough business.
What stage of that career was John Reid, Elton John's mentor, actually managing you?
We didn't get involved with John until we'd had the 3 albums, the Sheer Heart Attack album, and the 2 before that. And by that time, we were pretty successful.
You were established.
Yeah, and in fact, the first record that we had out under John Reid's auspices was Bohemian Rhapsody. So he came in at a rather neat
good timing
moment,
by
really.
JR, if I may say so.
Yeah, but we had a good, association with John Reid, and we're still very good friends.
How does that song appeal to you or not appeal to you these days?
Bohemian Rhapsody?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can hardly say it. I mean, I was very proud of it at the time. I thought we were doing something very different and daring, and quite almost comical in the middle.
Yes.
I mean, we regarded that as being rather amusing.
But does it, like so many songs in so many repertoires, become a miniature millstone around a band's neck?
I suppose so, but it's sort of diamond-encrusted millstone.
Well, voted the greatest single of all time
Yeah,
in numerous
I mean,
polls.
Well, I'm still proud of the record. I think it's a fine record, you know. And so really, no, I can't regard it as a millstone. It's something that we're very proud of, really. And I still think it sounds quite good, you know.
It does.
I wouldn't say much with the clothes that we're wearing in the video, but the record still stands up.
How did the chemistry, as far as the individual contributions forming a whole unit, come about in those days? I mean, was it four men all putting in equal inputs, or was there somebody who led the band?
Not really at first. I think it's more that now, four men putting in equal inputs now, more than it ever has been, because, I mean, we all write the same amount now.
But was there ever bickering over whose songs were going to be put out? I mean, for instance,
Oh,
you
yeah.
have to your name the hit single of the moment with Queen, and you've had them in the past with things like Gaga and all the rest of it.
Yeah. I mean, there's not really much bickering anymore, but we do have arguments. It's sort of just basically because we have differences of opinion about things, you know. And so whoever thinks they're right is obviously argues for that. But in the beginning, I suppose, really, the nucleus started off Brian and myself, and then Freddie. And then Freddie's a very powerful, dominating character, and a great kick to work with. I mean, he's great. He's just as magical to work with now as he was earlier on. And then John sort of gradually, as he was the new boy, became a force, you know, as he wrote more. And indeed, I wrote more as well. I didn't really write very much at first. I was just happy to be a part of forming this band, you know, which we thought would work. And all the ingredients were right, you know.
John always did come over, I think I would be right in saying, my opinion, mind you, in the early days, as being the quiet man of the group.
He's the sort of guy who would forget to tell you he'd won the pools that morning, you know.
Lovely line.
I mean, he really would.
That's one of the better lines we've had on this series of My Top 10, and a good cue for another record. I'm another fine drummer, God bless him.
Oh, yeah, God bless him. This is one of the finest performance bands ever, and they're, of course, British, as all the finest performance bands were, really. And I was a mod, and this is the great forgotten Who hit, in my opinion. Anyway, anyhow, anywhere.
I quite agree with what Roger has just said. Definitely one of the underrated songs from the repertoire of The Who.
Yeah, I remember seeing them do it live on stage, and the whole, very early in their career, and the whole concept of actually smashing up this equipment, which I was saving desperately to buy, you know, was the whole idea of that was very sort of rebellious and anarchic, which is great.
I don't know, but I would imagine that Keith never went near a tutor as far as his drumming was concerned. Did you ever do that?
No, I didn't. No, never. I think on the rock and roll side of music, I think self-taught is probably best, because, I mean, I think too many rules. I mean, I think rules are they shouldn't exist, really, in our form of the medium. And I think the fewer rules, the better. And the more they're broken successfully, the better, you know, because the wider things get then. So I think it's quite important not to be tutored, if possible.
But if, for instance,
if you can't teach yourself, I don't think you have the basic ability anyway, so...
Sure. I mean, I was just going to say, if I took you now down to Ronnie Scott's club in Frith Street and Stan Tracy was sat at the piano with a bass player, would you be happy to sit down behind the kit and play jazz?
Only if they paid me enough. No.
I mean, do you have that
I
ability?
used to play some jazz, actually, with Brian. We used to play in the Imperial College Jazz Club occasionally. Yeah, maybe, if I was in the right mood. But perhaps I wouldn't be in the right mood. I don't know, you know. It's a sort of feel thing, really.
Of course it is. You picked something from Robert Zimmerman, Mr. Dylan.
Yeah, I picked this. It's the longest, most self-indulgent record he ever made. But it's got this magical spell that he weaves with his lyrics on this, which just shows you the power of words. Probably some people it won't appeal to in the slightest bit. But I think people that enjoy sort of webs woven with words could enjoy this. It probably sounds very old-fashioned now, but the power of the words remains, I think. It's about 35 minutes long, so I presume we're only going to play a little bit of it.
Highway 61 revisited, and if you'll pardon the pun, a kind of magic there. You see, that little long song suddenly became something considerably shorter, for which I don't really apologise, just giving you a flavour. A wonderful writer, and I've been fascinated to note that he's been in London recently working with Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics.
Yeah, that's right, yes. It's been an interesting combination to hear what comes out of there.
How about you and production and the many sides of Roger Taylor? Because there are many sides these days, and I'm sure you're happy about that.
Yes, I mean, I quite enjoy production. I only like producing things that I like. I mean, I wouldn't do it as a job, if you know what I mean. I've just been doing quite a bit. I did a band called Virginia Woolf, and I did a record with Virgil Sharkey last year, and a record with Jimmy Nail, and I'm working...
Very big hit record with Jimmy Nail.
Yes. Yeah, it was, actually. And I'm working with a very good band from the Midlands now called Magnum. Not a mad fan of their name, but their music is really something that's really come on in leaps and bounds. And Tony is a very good writer, the main writer.
Let us play a track now by one of the great guitarists of all time.
Yeah, I mean, our tour manager actually used to tour manage this man right from the time he started in England to the day he died. And he was the greatest live performer I've ever seen. And I know Freddie went to see 14 of his gigs in a row when he first came over here. It's the Jimi Hendrix Experience with Voodoo Child.
Wonder how many people listening to us this afternoon happen to have a pair of headphones on, listening on the stereo system. If they are doing that, they'll have found that pretty interesting.
Brain-strangling guitar.
Would you have enjoyed backing somebody like that?
Oh, yeah, magic. I mean, because his sort of majesty and grace on stage was something to watch. I mean, it's quite amazing. He's an incredibly graceful performer. And
Now, I don't want you to get me wrong, and I certainly wouldn't want Brian May to get me wrong, but I've often felt that continuing in that sort of fashion as an inventive exponent of an instrument, Brian May certainly tried and succeeded with a tremendous number of tricks of the trade with guitars. I mean, he does and continues, I'm sure, to have a fascination with what the instrument is capable of producing.
Yes, Brian has done a lot. He's explored a lot of possibilities of guitar. I mean, he's done orchestras and jazz bands all on guitar. And a lot of it's down, he's got a lovely lead vibrato technique. And it's a touch, really. And a good sort of mixture of sounds, I think.
How quickly does the magic come back when the four of you sit down to rehearse? For instance, for something like Live Aid, which was a resounding success for you.
Yeah, it's better really when we actually get in front of an audience. That's when the magic really clicks. I mean, if there's no audience there, we find ourselves trying a lot, you know, and it just the sort of chemistry clicks when we actually get in front of an audience somehow, and it all just clicks into place and seems to work.
Put me on the spot and correct me and slap my wrist if I'm misquoting you, but working backstage as I did at Live Aid, introducing the bands along with Tommy Vance, we had quite a number of very interesting conversations with various people that were taking part. I got the distinct impression that some people had hardly bothered rehearsing at all, but I know for a fact, I think I'm right in saying, that you and the band had spent quite a lot of time actually getting that particular performance.
Well, not a lot of time, but we realised we've spent, in fact, 3 evenings, and I think in all we played about an hour and a half each evening. Really, we realised that it was going out to so many people. It was such a great thing. Well, also, we didn't want to make fools of ourselves. And we thought we'd have to distill into 20 minutes, really, the sort of basic essence of the band, which really means, in terms of sort of a mass audience, getting the most well-known songs over in 20 minutes, which is what we did, really. And it was just a case of sort of rearranging them a bit so we could fit them into that 20-minute time slot.
Are you now going to sit here and tell me that a lot of it was ad-libbed, or was it very...
No, I mean, all the sort of audience involvement, etc., is obviously ad-libbed, and there's no choreography or anything like that.
No.
It's basically learning the beginnings and endings and how much of the song we're going to do, or if we're going to snap a song into another song quickly. That's really what we rehearsed, not the actual songs or the actual performance. It's really the beginnings and endings.
How highly do you rate Freddie Mercury as a frontman for a band?
There's none better. None better. He's great. He's such a powerful character, personality. I don't think there's anybody much better.
But he grabs an audience, doesn't he? I mean, he grabbed the Live Aid audience in the space of 10 seconds.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, he's got it. That's all there is to it. And some people haven't.
Well, talking of interesting frontmen, the band who you've chosen next certainly had one of the great characters of the last 10 or 11 years.
Oh, yeah, it's still making good music. I loved the recent hit, Rise. But we were in the studio at the time this record was made. In fact, we were sort of sharing a studio at the time. It's the Sex Pistols. And that was an interesting period, actually. We actually didn't get on that bad with them. And this turned out to be, I think, a classic record, their first record, Anarchy in the UK.
John Lydon and the Sex Pistols and Anarchy in the UK. Hand on heart, Roger, I mean, did you hear the half-completed song before?
Yeah, I heard the first version as well, actually. I think it was mixed by their road manager or something. And then I think they re-recorded it with Chris Thomas, who made a great job, as he always does. And it's a great record.
I think loved by a lot more people than would have been willing to admit it at the time, actually. I think people liked them, didn't they? They did something for the business.
Well, I think, yeah, they did, actually. Yeah, they shook it up a lot, definitely. And
well,
they shook us up quite a bit, actually.
Did they?
Yeah, they did, really. I mean, I remember John's presence when he walked into the room or something. It was quite disturbing and very arresting at the time. And that's great. It's just what we needed, actually, at the time, because we were getting a bit complacent, you know.
Well, there are different ways of doing it in the music business, and here's a young man coming up next who came to this country some years ago, played an ill-fated concert at the Hammersmith Odeon, accused his record company of doing the wrong thing. I think I've got it the right way round. And now is one of the biggest names in the business. Just how much of a fan of Mr. Springsteen are you?
Well, I've enjoyed his music for a long time, way before he became famous, when he was playing in bars around New Jersey and New York City. And it's sort of gone up and down. There's been lots of hype in the meantime, but it does, you know, when it comes down to it, he's brilliant. He's a great performer, just incredible performer. And this is one of my favourite tracks of his, from the Born to Run album, Bruce Springsteen with Jungle Land.
Saturday afternoon with Roger Taylor with me here in the studio. I think it's fair to say that's almost his Bohemian Rhapsody. I mean, it's a tour de force, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that, and he's got a couple of others. I mean, Born to Run, Rosalita. Right. But I really prefer that to some of the new stuff. He's getting a bit patriotic and Reaganised these days.
Yes, it's a bit, hello Ronnie, here we are, isn't it?
Yeah,
some of the lyric
it's a bit, getting a bit that way.
Interesting observation.
Flag-waving stuff.
Interesting observation. Now then, your world travels have presumably taken you how many times to Australia?
Three times, actually. We haven't got there as many times as we have most places, but the time, a few years ago, we went there, and there was this great band who I saw live in Sydney, and they've since become the #1 band in Australia, and I think they're going to become the next sort of, I don't know, Doors or something, you know, of this age. I don't know. They could be really big, I think. They're called INXS, and this is a little-known track over here called Love Is What I Say.
The music of INXS, Love Is What I Say, and you, in the fairly near future, are going to be working with them, I gather.
That's right, yeah. We're doing 2 concerts at Wembley Stadium, and they will be the first act on in the day, which is great. It's, you know, nice. We also have the Alarm and Status Quo. And
do you see that as an immense challenge? I mean, you were there for Live Aid. You know all about big gigs. You played them all over the world. But Wembley must be something special, particularly to a British band.
Well, it's something. It's certainly not the biggest thing we've done, you know, but it's very special in this country. I mean, I think it's the biggest gig in this country, and it is the sort of national stadium. So, yes, it's really something, and it's a big kick.
Is there one night?
Doing 2 nights there.
Yeah. Is there one night above all others in the history to date of the bands that stands out in your mind as being a truly magnificent experience?
I suppose, I don't know. There was one particular night when we did, or 2 nights actually, in Brazil, when we played to 250,000 people, and who just turned up to see us with no support act or anything. And it's sort of, that was a bit odd to see this massive amount of people, and it was sort of all hinging on us, and as if we, God knows what we'd have done if somebody had broken a leg or something. But I don't know, I suppose the greatest day really was Live Aid because of what it meant to everybody all over the world, you know.
It strikes me, Roger, that you and the boys in the band have had a career which, so far, has been up all the way. There haven't really been any big lows as far as success is concerned. You continually come up with product which is successful, which makes the charts here in America in all the right markets. Is there a key to it? I mean, do you know what it is?
I don't know. I think there's, more than anything, I say we all still believe in what we're doing, and I think the songs are good. And I know that sounds very simplistic, but I think it's true. Also, there's the fact that we've never changed our lineup, and we're the same band that we were when we started, and that's very rare. And we haven't allowed anybody's ego to get so out of control that they've, you know, they don't think the others are good enough for them or something. So, I don't know, those factors I'd say are important, but...
And the diversification element's important, that you can go away and do other things, that Freddie has a solo career, that Brian can experiment, that John can do things.
Yeah, I think that's very important just for just so we don't feel completely constricted and trapped within this sort of monster called Queen. So it is nice to go and do those things where you have totally your own say and you get away from the others a bit. But then that makes it better when you come back, really, and work together again.
I presume I'd be start raving bonkers to imply that you're in touch with one or other member of the band every day of your life. I mean, presume there
Not
are
every
periods.
day, but we're in fairly constant touch with each other about things, you know. I mean, my lawyer talks to their lawyers. No, I'm only joking.
But there is a stage, I'm sure you would admit to me, where the business starts to get too much, where
Oh, yeah,
you hit the nail
sometimes.
on the head. You want to be creative, you want to be artists, you don't want the hassles.
No, but I think we try and isolate ourselves as much as possible from the hassles, but from all that stuff. But and we really, we think mainly about the music. You know, we leave the business side to business people.
Well, let's finish with a creative person who's had one huge success so far. I hope maybe we'll hear some more of her because she's bright.
Yeah, I know all these records have been fairly old, but there are my top 10, I suppose. Yeah, I think this lady, she either really annoys the pants off people or people love what she does. And I think she's pretty good. It's Laurie Anderson with Oh Superman.
Roger, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Andy.